The federal court system. The role of the courts. Most criminal and civil cases are actually heard by state and local level courts. Most criminal cases and civil cases are settled outside of court. In many instances, when you have violated criminal law or you've committed a crime, you are asked to plea bargain. Most criminal cases are resolved through plea bargaining or admitting guilt for a lesser charge. So you would say that, yes, I am guilty of this crime, and in exchange, you would receive less time in prison or just probation. Federal courts hear violations of federal law. A violation of federal law is something that violates a law that Congress wrote or a violation of the Constitution. An example of that would be illegal gambling. Because illegal gambling, you are not paying taxes on your earnings. So illegal gambling equals tax fraud. Stealing somebody's identity is a federal crime because it's a violation of Commerce Clause. Michael Vick, he was charged with a federal crime, and his trial was in federal court because he violated the Commerce Clause and he violated tax law by gambling and not paying taxes on the winnings from dog fighting. Our federal courts are structured in such a way that is like a pyramid. Most of your federal courts are lower district courts. Then there's a smaller number of the Court of Appeals, and there's only one Supreme Court. Lower district courts look like the courts that you think of when you are watching TV or a movie that shows a trial. You think of a court, you walk in, you see the defendant and the plaintiff, the jury and the judge, and there's people there to witness the trial. Okay. Lower district courts, this level right here, that's what they look like. These are trial courts where the facts and the questions of the case are presented by both sides' lawyers. So you actually have people arguing in these courts. Each state has at least one district court. The state of Virginia, we have 2 district courts. But California and Texas, states with larger population, they have 4 district courts. There are 94 judicial district courts in the United States. Now, if you don't like the decision of a district court and you think that there was something unfair about your trial, you can appeal. And when you appeal from a lower district court, you're going to end up in the Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the next step. The Circuit Court of Appeals is not like a court that you have seen before on TV. The Circuit Court of Appeals is actually a panel of judges. There's 4 judges that sit at the bench, and they don't hear each lawyer's side argue. Instead, they review the facts of the case, and they make a decision without hearing both sides. There is no jury, there is no trial, and they look at the facts of your case and decide, did something unfair or unconstitutional happen when your case was being tried? Now, if you don't like what the Circuit Court of Appeals has to say, the court of last resort is the Supreme Court. It's the only court that's actually mentioned in Article 3 of the Constitution. Again, this is a panel of judges, except we call Supreme Court judges justices. There are 9 justices that listen to the arguments and review the facts of the case. This is when your lawyer would go back and go argue for 30 minutes the facts and the constitutionality of your case. However, there's still no jury, and whatever the Supreme Court decides stands. Now, this is the map of the geographic boundaries of the district courts and the circuit courts. I told you that Texas has 4 different district courts. Texas is divided into 4 different districts, and each one of these districts has one federal court. Virginia has 2 districts. We have an Eastern District and a Western District. If you violate constitutional law in the state of Virginia, you have to go to a court in Norfolk. That's where our federal court for the Eastern District is located. It's located in Norfolk. If you're in the western part of the state, even if you're at the very tip of Virginia, you have to drive all the way up to Northern Virginia to go to the Western District Court in Harrisonburg. Now, the different blocks of colors with the numbers over them, 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth, those are the Circuit Court of Appeals. There's only 11 Circuit Court of Appeals districts or boundaries, or geographical boundaries. Now, if you want to appeal your case, say that the Eastern District Court decided in Virginia, you would have an appeal to the 4th Circuit Court. Okay. The powers of the courts, the federal courts, are established in Article 3. Remember, the only court that is mentioned in the Constitution is the Supreme Court. Judicial review is a power that the courts gave themselves. They gave themselves the power to declare laws unconstitutional. It is important to remember the case that did this. That's Marbury versus Madison. Marbury versus Madison, in that decision, the Supreme Court gave themselves the power to declare laws unconstitutional. Another word that relates to the courts is called jurisdiction. That's what they call their power. Jurisdiction is authority to hear a case. There's 2 types of jurisdiction. There's original jurisdiction, and if a court has original jurisdiction, they can hear a case for the first time. Lower courts only have original jurisdiction. You cannot appeal a case to a lower court. The lower courts are the courts that hear your arguments for the first time. The Supreme Court also hears some cases for the first time. The other kind of jurisdiction is appellate. What word do you see in appellate? You should see appeals. Appellate jurisdiction is when a court gets to review an appealed decision from the lower courts. The only jurisdiction that the Circuit Court of Appeals has is appellate jurisdiction. The Circuit Court of Appeals will never hear a case for the first time. The Supreme Court, because it's the court of last resort, and because that's what they do is hear appeals from the circuit courts, they have appellate jurisdiction. You can only appeal your case in the United States through the federal court system if you think there's a constitutional question or issue with the decision that was made regarding your case. You can't just be dissatisfied with your guilty verdict. You have to prove that there was something wrong or something unfair about the way that your case was handled.